step out here and there, so
Okay.
we keep going. Don't mind me, just don't agree to anything.
Okay, you got the full authority, agree on everything.
All right. Well, good to see everybody. We got your proposal
Sunday night?
Sunday night. So I appreciate you sending that.
Yeah.
We have not had much time, or hardly any time except before today to really go through it. Because, we thought we'd get it a little quicker, thought you guys had it, but that's fine, we got it, and try to start going through it. So I'm not sure how you want to proceed. We can sort of walk through it a little bit.
We could walk through it, but I think, so the articles in the CBA that we changed are here, and then separate was wages and pension.
Right.
So,
And we can talk about wages and pension towards the end, as we talked before. I think that we're probably going to end up sort of saving those for later from our viewpoint. Difficult to get through the language stuff, and it doesn't look like you have too much. There's a handful of things that need to be discussed or clarified, just to understand what your proposals are and stuff. So we'd certainly like to do that. And the stuff with minor changes would be pretty quick, so we could sort of flip through that if you want.
that's fine, yeah. If you have any questions of us of the changes, and I might not be able to answer it, but the board might be able to, because
Right.
we actually worked there.
So, just want to.
Mr. Levitt, real quick, is there any other MOUs or anything that we don't have that we need to be aware of?
You mean in existence?
In existence on top, in lieu, so there's nothing, just so the contract? Okay.
Yeah. I'm not-
I just wanted to make sure we didn't have anything else out there.
I'm not aware of any formal MOUs or anything. I don't know if over the years there's been any grievance settlements or something, but nothing there's no.
No MOU to the
Not
contract?
going.
Right.
Okay, okay, all right. So do you want to just fast forward past
Yeah,
the
I mean-
first
Yeah.
page clearly is,
It's just changing your name, Article 1 recognitions, just changing your name.
agreement?
Management rights, I have a question on 2.6 as to what your concern is with
So-
2.6.
So 2.6, when I was reading it, and I talked this over with the board, our interpretation is it's kind of limiting if they want to back a candidate or lobby to change the city ordinance for pension. That's kind of what I get out of that article, where they wouldn't be able to speak with commissioners or whatnot. Not bargain with commissioners, but if you live in the city, you're still a tax-paying citizen, you should still be able to talk to them and provide them, as long as you're not bargaining, there shouldn't be a preclusion to it.
I guess the theory behind it, I'm not sure what would meet the circumstance. I mean, certainly no intention to keep people from talking to elected officials or, taking political positions. But it does, which has the effect of altering the labor agreement. So we've spent days bargaining, we've agreed to a deal, then, why would anybody be trying to undercut the deal?
Well, I would
That's the
agree.
concern, that it's not general political stuff or whatever, but, we agreed to X, Y, Z, we don't want you going behind, nor should you, quite frankly. It's our contract with the union and the employees, and, neither of us want to undercut the deal. So-
Well, it says here, the last sentence is what was considered, such agreement includes, but it is no way limited to the supporting either directly or indirectly of the legislature. It just kind of, I don't know, if there's a problem with the support indirectly, then change in the ordinance to do a benefit, add an additional death benefit or whatever, the city ordinance can change, and if they want to lobby for that or lobby to change the 185 statute, why would they not be able, that would end up changing this contract if the unions got together, decided to lobby and change the 185 statute. I mean, the Florida League of Cities lobbied to reduce the 185 benefits. So, I mean, I don't see why we would be precluded from doing that.
All right, well, I wanted to understand, what your concerns were. so
Okay. Maybe we can
we'll
reword it.
Certainly, and we'll look at it.
Okay.
I don't know that anything's happened in the past, but we read language that said it wouldn't happen, so maybe that's why, I just didn't know if you have something in mind that, you're trying to get to specifically versus just a general, sort of objection to it.
Okay. No. That was the reason.
So we'll look at that. Employee rights, looks like, just change the name. So, and I'll say here, so, these simple ones, we can probably TA, but some of these things, we're not sure if we're gonna have changes to them later. There'll be some more substantive articles you didn't wanna change. And after the last discussion, you were gonna get us this. Our intent was to see what you came up with and then prepare a response. And like I said, since we really haven't had time to look at it, we don't have a specific response. A lot of this ministerial stuff obviously is not a
Right.
problem. And most of it's not, and then we'll talk about some things, then we'll take a break and see what maybe we can
Okay,
actually
absolutely.
sign off on, or what homework we have to do for next time. Article 5, dues deduction. There's a typo in there that you didn't catch, I'm sure you'd like to fix. You don't want us sending the dues to the FOP.
Yes, I did miss
5.1, so
that.
you changed everywhere else, but you missed that one, but we understand. And then you want to strike the 5.3, which is the, 3-cent charge. Of course, statute permits us to charge, and we have historically done that. And there is quite a bit of administrative cost to us. Obviously, this doesn't even cover it, but it's an effort to at least recognize that, we have a lot of time invested in setting it up and monitoring it and making the list and things like that. So we would like to keep it.
Okay.
We're not getting rich off of it, it's not breaking your bank, but it's sort of recognition that it takes some effort and cost to us. And we do have that in all the other contracts, so.
Okay.
I'd like you to take a look at that. Personnel record 6.3. Looks like you just moved the words around. I don't know if that changes the meaning any. It said directly or indirectly furnished, and you changed it to furnished directly or indirectly, so.
Yeah, that was a mistake on my part.
So
You can just leave it.
You can just leave it, yeah.
Temporary assignment, need to make any changes to?
It's, it says
Wait a minute.
15 up there, but these are not
7.
matching.
Yeah, I did want to change the head. They were done that way, and I don't know if when I changed it from PDF to Word,
Oh, it
if
just
that
kinda fell
affected
apart,
it. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know if it did that on,
I think it did, 'cause some of your fonts fell apart, it just,
yeah, when I converted, I think it just,
Yeah.
so. I just changed the actual
So we
word.
will, as we finalize these articles, we'll actually give you a copy.
Okay,
We'll generate the official copy to
Okay.
create the contract, so we'll clean all that up.
okay, thank you.
So you didn't have any change, that's one, we'll want to talk to the chief about and go through, make sure we didn't need any change, but I don't know that we do, so we'll look at 7. You didn't have too much to, you did, and we appreciate trying to, you added the sentence in 8.4 to try to clarify this whole issue with the testing and stuff.
Right, yeah, that was, because it became an issue, so.
Right. So, that seems okay. We don't know if there's a better way to say it or a way that covers it better. But as a sort of a simple statement to notify the union, I mean, that's what we talked about last time. We're
Right.
in agreement with that and don't really have a problem with it. Just want a little more time to just see if
Okay.
that's the right language.
All right.
But it's, the concept is certainly not a problem. Do you have a question on 8.5?
So,
So, current language, if you're demoted, you're not eligible for promotion in a year. And in theory, that covers voluntary and involuntary.
well, so
So you
here's the
added
theory.
language to fix
Well,
it.
here's the theory behind it. So if you get sick or your wife gets sick or something and you got promoted and you're on probation, you take a voluntary demotion because you can't, that's not punitive, it shouldn't be punitive.
Right.
But if you're demoted because you did something wrong, well, that would be punitive. But you're putting both those in the same category. That was the theory behind this. If you take a voluntary demotion for something that's not disciplinary, that shouldn't be held against you, if you see where I'm going on that.
Yeah.
We've had a couple arbitrations over that particular thing and that other issue with other
Other
cities.
places. In principle, we understand what you're saying. I guess the concern is if somebody steps down involuntarily, why would they want to within a year go right back? You've raised sort of family issue or some specific problem. I guess we could see some situation where, temporarily you feel like you can't perform or don't want the responsibility. So we understand your point. And don't necessarily disagree that if someone voluntarily does it for,
Right.
if they do it because they're failing or they know they're not doing well or, they've been under performance issues and before they get demoted, they take the voluntary, there's a gray area there. So they really weren't performing, and they make it voluntary. But then in your situation, it makes sense, where somebody has a personal reason or something. So we're probably okay with that. Again, we'll look at it. We would have to say demotion for this section. Obviously, a demotion is the demotion, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. What you're saying for this section, it's a demotion here is only involuntary. So if we stick with this language, we just want to add a demotion for purposes of this section.
Okay, well, yeah, take a look
Just
at
to
it.
clarify that, because even voluntary, if it's a demotion, that is a demotion, so we don't want to.
Well, I would argue that, I don't want to get in the weeds on this one, but to me, and this is one of our arbitrations, a demotion is punitive. A transfer is non-punitive. You can still transfer to the lower, from a sergeant to a corporal, or a corporal to an officer. You can do that could be considered a transfer. Most forms in HR have demotion, transfer, or lateral transfer in their indication. I haven't researched enough to know what HR here has, but.
We do demotion for anything that's a lower pay grade. It's just simply based
Okay.
on pay grade.
All right.
That's just how our structure
Okay.
is set up.
Nine, we just clarified already, that should be okay. Employee Management Committee looks okay. Seniority. I don't see any changes, so we make any changes there. So we'll look at 11, see if there's anything you think needs to be clarified, but obviously you didn't make any changes, so unless the chief or we're aware of something. So right now, we'll just review it. Probation should be fine. 13, internal investigations, let's talk about that a little bit, just to clarify where we are, not too much there, so that's good. So in 13.2, no problem changing the name to Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights.
And if you remember when we were in negotiations with the Volusia County Sheriffs, we just wanted the entire article of the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights put in instead of just 112.533. So it would be Part 6, which would be 112.531 through 112.534, which is state statute.
Yeah, that's probably okay. The only question I have is, you struck to the extent it's applicable to the investigation. So we'd like to keep that language in there. There are circumstances where the Bill of Rights doesn't apply. So obviously if it applies, we're committed to doing that. We're confident the city does that already. And by law, we have to do it whether it says so or not. So I mean, it's a right that employees have. We don't have a problem including that, you know, we'll comply with the Bill of Rights. But it said to the extent it's applicable, and there could be circumstances where the Bill of Rights doesn't apply. So we'd like to keep that in here.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what circumstances would not apply, but.
Could you give us an example? Like, what would that be?
Well, if it's not an investigation. If it's not an investigation, then it doesn't apply to, you know, what time are you going to lunch? It applies to investigations. So, you know, a lot of times, and I know it's more the chiefs than the departments, you know, they like to use an IA or a Bill of Rights investigation for everything. And sometimes you don't have to do a full investigation.
But we don't do investigations every day. That's the whole purpose, that's what you say. So this is for internal investigations where the officer's Bill of Rights would absolutely be adhered to, right?
We agree. If it applies, if the Bill of Rights applies to the situation, we absolutely agree. We want to follow it, we'll follow it, promise to follow it, committed to following it.
Right. If this article is about investigations, internal investigations, there's not an internal, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that there's any point that you would be investigated for being late, for having a stain on your uniform, or for any disciplinary action that way. That's not an investigation, that's just straight out discipline. So you're late, you nip it up and you're done.
That may be the case, but then what's wrong with saying to the extent it applies? I mean, there's nothing. We're not excluding anything. If it applies, we'll do it. But there are things in the world that it doesn't apply to, which is, like you say, being late. We don't have to do investigation. But if we did an investigation, we probably have to apply the Bill of Rights. But you don't always have to do the investigation.
So my concern with the language is, and this is just, it's not this agency, it's some of the agencies we've had to deal with, to the extent applicable. Well, if the chief and I disagree on what we should be provided, I don't think that information is relevant to the investigation. The statute doesn't say who gets to decide. If we think it's relevant, who doesn't, we should be provided the evidence prior to the interview. That's the kind of stuff that that language I think would be, or applicable. But we don't think it's applicable. It's not relevant to the investigation. Well, who gets to decide what's relevant to the investigation to be provided to the officer prior to the investigator, his or her interview?
Well, the language just says we'll comply with it. So this doesn't fix what you're talking about. We're going to comply with it. If we think compliance means one thing, you think compliance means something else, that's what keeps us lawyers in business, because the city makes a judgment, I don't think so, and if you don't agree, then you follow whatever remedies, lawsuits, or anything that's available, or challenge the discipline because we failed to comply with the Bill of Rights and those kinds of things.
Well, when you guys go back and talk to the chief, we'll talk and see where, go ahead, Brian.
That's my issue with it, is that this whole section is pursuant to investigations. Anytime there's an investigation, that's the only thing this section covers is investigations. Anytime there's an investigation, law enforcement Bill of Rights is applicable. I think what Greg's trying to say, and that I agree with, is The city can turn around and say, well, we don't think it's applicable, so we're not gonna do it, and pursuant to the contract, it says the extent it's applicable, so we're not gonna do it.
Oh, that's not our opinion of applicable, that's legally applicable. And if we don't, you have remedies to force us to. You have you have ways to seek review. If we fail to
No, we do.
comply,
but
then you have
this
remedies
gives-
to force us to do
But
that.
this gives you all a contractual exit plan to say, no, we said the extent it's applicable, and under our theory, it's not applicable, so this is contractual, not statutory. That's our problem with the issue. And like I said, this whole section is for investigations. Investigations, a law enforcement bill of rights apply 100% of the time. So to the extent that it's applicable is just not necessary.
We will look at that further based on your comments. I ask you to take a look at it too further. And I guess I'd ask, has there ever been a problem here? Is there an issue here that needs to be fixed with this language?
Well-
I don't know that there ever has been.
So Mark, I'm not sure I'm gonna entertain you with this. Every time we go, not me and you, but whenever arbitration that I've been to, well, that's exactly what, well, it's not in contract. We're not anticipating that, or we're not saying it did happen. We're trying to anticipate a protection for our bargaining unit members to where, in case it does, these gentlemen over here, they may not always be in the chief and in the supervisory roles. It could be somebody from Massachusetts they bring down after Mr. Godfrey retired. I don't know. I mean, this is set out for protection of anything that could happen. And we're looking at it from our experience. That's the reason that
It's the same reason that we wanted to change or put that little blurb in the promotion article where it wasn't a problem until it was. That's
No,
the
I
way I want to do
understand.
it.
Try to fix it. But it did already say, and we called it the Police Officer Bill of Rights, it already said we comply with it. So language was there. It already said Bill of Rights. I understand names change, statutes, things like that, but the rights were already in here, that we would comply with the Bill of Rights. So arguably, what you're asking for doesn't change much. You've changed the name to Law Enforcement Bill of Rights instead of a Police Officer Bill of Rights. Of course, you struck that one thing, which is what I'm asking, is that a problem here? But I understand what you're saying. Let me ask about the next sentence. It already says a copy, it says Bill of Rights, we can change that back to law enforcement, right? So it's consistent, but it already says a copy is, attached as an appendix. And what are you asking it to say, indicating that it's been provided? You just want a signature that they got it, or once
No,
it's
so-
attached, then they got it?
Well, again, I haven't had an IA here, so I can't tell you what the process is. Usually, it is an ordeal in every one of the agencies that we represent to get the complete investigative file. Not just the IA narrative, the investigative file. That, now, if there's certain things, you have Marcy's law, you have certain things that would be redacted, but we would like the entire file. The audio recordings of the interviews don't always match the IA narratives. So when we are preparing for a grievance or whatnot, if we were to contest the discipline, we would need the entire file, and that is guaranteed by statute free of charge. We just want to make sure that we have the entire file. If that makes
All
any
right, so
sense.
okay, so that's, I understand. So your emphasis is on complete.
Complete.
That's what you're adding. And because this just says, forms attached indicating the officer was provided with the complete. So
Complete.
whether it's a form or not, you want it to be the complete, which I presume the Bill of Rights requires, right?
Right, so when we get to arbitration, let's just say, and all this new evidence starts flooding forth that we were never provided, we want to make sure that we have a receipt that we were provided with the entire investigative file. That way, when it gets brought up at arbitration, there's additional evidence. Well, we were never provided that. Oh, well, it wasn't pertinent at the time. That's the theory behind that. And we have, we've kind of gone through that recently, so, it's just, again, we're trying to look out for the bargaining unit.
The statute requires us to give a complete copy, right? I mean, we are required to do that.
Right.
It's not a,
But it doesn't always happen.
But this
that's
is-
why we wanted the language. We just had an arbitration on the sheet the past 3 weeks.
So indicating like, sign off, like, you know, like you give the receipt, the officer receives all the information, they have a receipt they sign. So it's just a receipt that the IA investigator or whoever was giving us the whole file, this is the whole file. Just, hey, this is the whole file. I'm not saying they're doing anything.
So if the investigator doesn't include something, the employee's acknowledging receipt of this package, right?
Right, and they could, we can talk
I
about,
received what the IA guy gave me.
correct. And that would be the complete file.
Is that an issue? Do we give a complete file?
We give them everything, yeah. I don't know what the next chief's gonna give them, but I give them everything.
Right, and again, we're not talking about this chief,
I
we're just,
understand.
yeah.
Just trying, again, you know, right, some things need to be fixed, should be fixed, some things are just for general statements and
Mhm.
protections and stuff, so. All right, we'll have to talk about that.
Okay.
Not contesting they should get it, not saying that at all.
Okay.
but If an acknowledgement's gonna be no better than the law says we have to do it, then, in fact, if the investigator doesn't give it, by mistake, or because he doesn't think he has to, or doesn't think it's part of the file or something, it's not gonna fix the problem. If we didn't do it, it's still a problem.
But that's the nice thing about the contractual language stating it, then we typically don't end up in an arbitration over, and that saves the state entity.
All right, we'll look at that. Bulletin boards, you just changed the name. Voting, what changes? Everybody vote today?
I did.
Vote today?
The machine broke.
Did it?
Yep.
It was just you.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't want you to go.
You pulled the lever too hard. You don't pull levers anymore, I guess, let's show my age. All right, disciplinary action, 16, not too much, but a couple significant ones. So, first thing, you struck a non-probationary employees to be discharged.
Right. Because the statute, the Leo Boer statute is very specific in the fact that any discipline for a law enforcement officer has to be done in accordance with the statute. So if you're going to issue, you can terminate them anytime you want without cause for probationary, but if you're going to issue a discipline, this goes right back to the Bill of Rights.
All right, so as probationary, we can just call you and say it's not working out, see you later. And that's not implicated here. But
Correct,
do
but if
it
you're going to
because of
discipline them,
discipline.
right, because these guys aren't, you know, they have a certification. So if you have a complaint lodged against you in an internal affairs investigation from an outside source, and they're on probation, yeah, the chief can go, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this, you know, go ahead and go down the road. But if you sustain the discipline, you're now affecting the guy's certification and future employment with another agency. So you should leave, this would be, he would still, the probationary employee would still have protections under the Bill of Rights, and that's what that is. So we're not saying you can't terminate without cause a probationary employee. Or, yeah, we're just saying that you can't discipline them. I think that's, I mean, I don't know why that would be, I mean, I think that's completely understandable, especially the way FDLE works with the certifications.
Yeah, well, look at that, we're trying to understand where you're headed. So.
Okay.
It's the Form 77. It's the Form 77, I think it is, that has that section on it.
And 16.3, you struck the word formal.
Again, the reason for formal is the Bill of Rights does not indicate formal or informal investigations. It says anything that can lead to discipline. So if you're calling it a formal investigation, you can start out in an informal investigation, be questioned and everything, and then still end up with a termination. So the informal, formal, it's just an investigation. And the Bill of Rights is very specific. It doesn't specify informal, informal. It says anything that can lead to discipline.
All right, look at that. Grievance procedure, 17.2, we're fine with adding unless extended by mutual agreement. Let's talk about the days. You jumped double the time from 5 to 10 days in most instances.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I kind of did that because I think we needed to have a discussion with it. One, what is a 10-day period? Is it a 10-day HR period where it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4? Is it a 12-hour rotation or 10-day work day or work period for, I think, we've run into this before. I just like it clarified better, like excluding holidays and weekends. I think,
There is a definition in 17.8, unless referred to as calendar, all references to days are defined as days when City Hall is open for normal business. And even there it says maybe extended by mutual agreement.
Okay.
So truthfully, we don't need it, where I said it was okay, it's okay, but we already have that language, so we don't necessarily need it there in that step.
Okay.
17.8 did cover it, so yeah, we looked
I
at it,
agree
we
with
thought it
that.
was there, and we looked at it.
Okay.
So that may cover it. So if we're talking about, basically business days of City Hall, because we know you guys work so week, we're talking about business days of City Hall. Hopefully the 5 days then covers that. So we'd like to keep it. We want to keep things moving. We want to get things done promptly. If there's a problem, we don't want to delay in knowing about it so we can get it fixed. So as far as I know, 5 days has been working, and unless there's some specific reason, we prefer to keep it at 5.
I will defer to the board on that.
You guys can talk about it.
Okay.
But take a look at that and see if you can agree to keep it at 5. And then, actually, under step 4 on, I guess, pages, the same page, step 4, we added administrative working days again.
Yeah,
we
you're
need to
right.
add that.
Okay.
With whatever the time is, the days are defined as City Hall work days.
Okay.
Step 5, arbitration. I think I understand where you're heading. I've explained to the city that an individual there are circumstances where an individual can pursue arbitration without the union.
Correct. Right to work state, if you're not a member of the union, you're a member of a minority local, you're still protected by the contract. Now, we wouldn't pay for the arbitration. It'd be up to that individual, but I don't think there's any reason to preclude anybody from the protections of the contract if they want to pay for their own arbitration. But
And we're not trying to, the initial wording, except as otherwise provided by law, only the union can do it. So there are circumstances where the law permits the individual to do it.
Yeah.
For example, where an individual, as you know, or I'm sure the council knows, and just as an example, and you don't usually make this mistake, but sometimes you do, it's not even a mistake, sometimes you're honest about it, but if you decide, we're not gonna take this grievance, even for a member, because we don't think it has merit, you're wrong, you did something wrong, you punched the chief in the nose, by God, you should be fired. You say, we're not gonna take it because we don't think there's merit to it. Then they cannot take it individually, because you have decided on the merits, it's not worthy of it. If you just say, you're not a member, we're not gonna represent you, then the individual can take it. So the language that exists, except as provided by law, only the union can do it. The law provides when the individual can do it. So, because I don't want to waive, nor should you want to, if you think a case has no merit and it's not worthy of being taken, and you're honest about it, and state that to the person, to the city, that, hey, this person did something wrong, which again, is in everybody's interest. If you got a bad apple, we wouldn't be working here anyway. Then the employee cannot. So I don't want to open the door to say, regardless, an employee can do it. So maybe at a caucus, you guys, and with your lawyer, can look at that. But I think we've protected the right of an employee with a minority union or non-member to do it by saying unless otherwise provided by law. This law does permit them to do it, and we recognize that in the brief. So,
All right, we'll talk about
if you would talk about that.
And I'll tell you what my issue with that right off the bat is laws change. And if we're negotiating for our union members' protection, I believe that anybody, whether union or not, should be protected by it. And I can't guarantee you that the law's gonna stay the same, and they're gonna continue to allow that. So that would be my issue with not having it in there.
I guess we'd have to see what the law change was, but if the law changed, for example, and said an employee cannot do it without a union, then the law trumps the contract anyway. I mean, any law that is inconsistent with the rights under the contract, the law takes precedent. So if the law changed to say they couldn't, you still arguably would not have it.
I'm more arguing if they changed the law and just took those protections out and didn't make any mention of them, then non-union members would have no right to arbitration for the contract or for law. That's an issue for me.
All right, well, I guess we'll both look at it, but to express why it's an issue for us. So I would ask you all to look at that. Because, yeah, the right to do arbitration is just based on the union having these rights as the representative. Absent the union representing employees, they typically don't have it. It's not a common law arbitration, it's a procedure. We default to the city, so.
No, and that's my problem. They're still part of the unit. They're just not represented by us.
And this was a concern of the board, and that's why it's in there.
Our position is we don't want to expand the rights of someone to arbitrate. They still have city procedures. We have procedures. We have what's called career service, civil service, whatever we have it. There are procedures beyond this that a non-represented employee, such as other non-represented. So there are other safeguards in place that the city has provided. So we're not looking to expand the rights under this. That's our position. I'm just asking you to look at that.
Okay.
$17.5, you want to take out loser pays, huh?
Well, most of the contracts we have is split equally. I mean,
Most of them do, but I like loser pays.
you like loser pays?
Well, it's incentive to both sides, I think, to try to meet in the middle, try to compromise and reach a settlement before we both incur the expense, not just equal expense, but the possibility of having to pay the full fee. It's going to make us look at our case more carefully and say, well, this is a close one. We don't want to pay the whole damn thing. Let's settle this thing. In the same token, it should do that to you too, where you look at it and say, yeah, we might have an argument, but we don't want to risk paying an arbitrator $5,000 or $6,000 if we're fully responsible. So I think it helps the parties come to a compromise because it's sort of pressure on both sides.
Well, we're okay with it, but I can tell you Port Orange said the same thing till they lost and ended up with a $20,000 bill. And then they wanted to split their costs.
Here's the other issue. How do you
Well, it's
determine-
right, somebody, hindsight's gonna be 20/20 for both of us. When, the first time you lose one, you're gonna wish we didn't have loser pays, so.
But that's the other thing. How do you tell the prevailing party if it was a 5-day suspension reduced to a 1-day suspension? Does that make the city the losing party?
The arbitrator typically, that's part of their award, because usually it's addressed in a brief that says, loser pays, and the arbitrator could say, the arbitrator always has the ability to determine neither side lost or equally lost or whatever, so. It works, it's not a problem typically, and I know, I understand both sides, you're right. First time either one of us lose, we're gonna wish it went in there. And I'm not saying I'm diehard on it, but that's what's there, and
Right.
unless there's a reason to change it.
Well, instead of going with an arbitrator, and we know, I'm sure we both have our opinions on arbitrators, depending on which way the decision fell, but I would rather, I think it's safer for both sides just to have it equal. We leave the arbitrator out of it, we just, because we've had some decisions where the arbitrator wouldn't make a determination of who was at fault or who lost. And then, now we're fighting over the, I think it's fair. I mean, I don't know if that's something that's, it's just an offer. And I don't think it's that big of a deal to us, but.
All right, we'll both talk about it. We lawyers, we gotta be careful, we can't control the entire country, we could all pick apart every little thing, but, the party's gotta live with it, we gotta reach a deal at some point here, so. You didn't have any changes. We will look at that and see if we have anything. I don't know if we do. If the chief had anything in mind. Again, this situation, we want to see where you were looking for changes before we got through it. Since we just got it in essence yesterday, we haven't had time to do that. So we'll review that, might be able to sign off on that. Same thing with leave of absence. You didn't make any changes. We don't know if we have any changes to propose, so we'll look at that. Holidays. I think the city, as a matter of practice, has added Veterans Day, so we're okay adding that holiday.
Question on that. Is that going to be done for these guys while we're doing this contract? Since the rest of the city's already got it, or are we gonna have to wait till this entire contract's done and then they'll be back paid for the Veterans Day?
Good question. I've talked with him. We haven't talked about it. Right now, you don't have it, so arguably you wouldn't, but I don't know what they've discussed that.
We got a budget.
You know what's ironic? The last contract we had, when that was brought up, we brought up that very holiday. And you sat here and told us that if we got that holiday, then everybody else would have to get it. So now, everybody else has got it and we don't. That's the irony of it. And that's why I think that, I don't know what the whole problem with that is. I mean, you've given it to everybody else. I mean, why do you have to make these guys wait? And basically, in a section of your city where you probably have the highest number of veterans per capita of any department that you have, right here in this room.
Well, anything I'd have to say would just piss you off more, so I won't say.
Yeah, you're probably correct.
We tried to bargain with the police union months ago, and we could have been done with this, but that's not what happened, and that's fine. But here we are, and it's a subject of bargaining. So again, I don't know what the city's preference
But
is.
we were in the middle of changing unions, right? You were aware of that.
Absolutely, but the law still says it's due to bargain. We didn't push it, we acceded to let's see what's happening. So I'm just saying, there's opportunities, and I don't know what the city's saying. I'm not saying you're not getting it, or you are. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the.
It's just more fun to make us wait for it. Is that what you're saying?
It's what?
It's just more fun to make us wait for it.
It isn't fun at all. It's something that's in the interest of both sides, get through collective bargaining as peacefully as possible. We've got a good relationship, we've had one prior union with the people. That's not an issue of value. Obviously, the chief respects and the city respects what you guys do and the value of everybody. So this isn't, we're not playing games, we're not trying to hurt anybody.
Well, with that being said, sir, my question is, if it's in there, you don't have any issues with it, why would you not just go ahead and give it to us, seeing us out in a couple of days.
3 days prior.
3 days.
You guys, I don't know if you're not listening or you just want to keep talking. I said I will talk to the city and see what they would like to do. And it's possible they'll say no problem, or it's possible we'll say no, it's a subject of bargaining. But I have no response. I don't know what we're gonna do, what we wanna do. I'm not saying you don't, or we shouldn't, or you're right or you're wrong. I mean, just keep pushing for.
Do you have anything?
We're gonna talk to Hawker. She's not gonna
Okay.
just speak out in front of 30 people without talking to the chief and the city administration to determine what the proper process is. But we haven't said no, so don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory potentially.
And I think the next change was in 20.2, last paragraph.
Yeah, let's see, we're gonna have to talk about that.
And that's pretty much standard throughout all the other law enforcement entities in the county. So if you work a 12-hour shift, you get a 12-hour holiday pay. If you're off, if you work an 8-hour shift, you get an 8-hour holiday pay. You work a 10.5 hours, so that's, you can call it, New Smyrna has that, Port Orange, DeLand, so it's pretty consistent across the board with the other agencies, so we're just trying to,
Yeah, and we are aware of that. I'm aware of that. They're aware of that. There's certainly plenty of contracts that have that. There are reasons not to do it if you run the calculations, blah, blah, blah. There's, you work similar hours, people get, if it's an 8-hour vacation and 10 holidays, whatever it is, the holidays, and it's 80 hours off that people get. So even though you work 10, but then you work fewer days too, sometimes, so there's a way to calculate it to make it balanced, and we just need to look at that.
Okay.
I understand a lot of people.
Okay.
I guess what most people are not, we finished.
Oh, good.
I agree with everything. Just ask
I know,
them.
better
Just
than
ask
that,
them.
yeah.
21, personal leave time, you didn't make any changes to, we'll have to look at that, but I don't know that we have any changes, so that might be good. I see what you're asking for. You want to go to the 80-hour period from 84. Right now, obviously, he's using 84
Straight time,
pay
right.
period, 7K, and obviously saves the city some overtime, and it's overtime that employees aren't getting. I understand you want it. Employees want overtime after 80. That's not been the practice or the policy, so.
Well, I'd like to point out too, again, through the other law enforcement agencies, it's pretty consistent with the 80-hour straight time. There's also a benefit for, in my opinion, the department, in that it encourages you to come to work if you want that 4 hours overtime. If you bang out sick one day, you don't get your 4 hours built in overtime. So if you bang out sick, you're gonna pay overtime for that person that comes in, but most people want their overtime, so that, if they have that headache and you're like, how should I go in? Well, I don't want to lose my overtime. There's an incentive there. It's 4 hours. I mean, I don't think it's going to break Ormond Beach, but, I think that's a benefit for the department as well.
Well, it's built in 4 hours. So,
It is a built-in,
so-
but you have to show up for the whole thing to get
Yeah,
it.
but so it's guaranteed we're gonna have to pay it, and for every employee, every week, or every 2 weeks, so there's a pretty significant cost to it. So we'll have to
Okay.
look at that cost, but we will look at it. That's the only thing there, I think it is, right? So we just need to determine that work period, whether stick at 84, which the law does permit us to do, and we have taken advantage of it. It does save us money.
Questions?
3,
I have an idea. I think there's something on that. Is that wages and pension?
yeah, so that, it looks like that's all the changes you have, which isn't a lot, and we appreciate that.
Okay.
Obviously, some of the things you have are significant. One little word makes a difference.
And then you had some notes on some of these that you did not make a proposal, so are you not going to make a proposal like seniority, for example? Just, we had some articles you were holding.
Right. I guess that's the question.
Do you
Is
have
this
more?
all the changes, or are there other articles you haven't changed that you are still looking at? Because we don't want to
We-
assume your status quo if you're not.
Well, we'll talk it over in the caucus, but everybody got a chance to see, that's why it took long. We wanted to make sure everybody
Yeah, that's fine.
saw the changes and what we had, so.
We just don't want to assume you're good on the other ones.
Okay, well, we'll talk
And
about
we
it.
don't need an answer today if you're not ready to say, but.
Yes, so, again, I won't go through them, there's other changes, but these are ones, you'll let us know if, in fact, it's interesting, so it's the back few, so I don't know if you didn't get to them, or you got to them, didn't make a change, so you guys talk about it and let us know, but if from 23 on you don't have any changes, you're like, what
Well,
number,
insurance.
really, the bereavement says Article 17.
Well, wages are 28, wages are,
Right, wages
Yeah.
and pension,
Pension.
yes. But otherwise, we will look at those, and if we don't have changes to them, then, you know, we'll be able to knock them out. So hopefully, most of these, you know, we won't have tweaks to, and we can knock them out, hopefully today, if not today, we could do that next time. So we can, as I said, we're probably, I don't think we're in a position necessarily to respond to wages or pension today, but we can, if we have any questions, I don't know, we just want to at least better understand your proposal before we break. So let's just look at it, be sure we understand. Telling you we're gonna necessarily respond to it. So looking at the wage article, can you explain this, the one-time 0.5% time and grade? Is that 0.5% per what? We weren't clear what you're asking.
okay, so this is, with all, we know that the cities don't like the evil word step plan. So but we do understand, and I think the city understands, there is a compression issue. This 0.5% is per year, the time and grade for a sworn officer. So what you do when you give a 3% raise across the board, you know, you still have all those years that, from 2010, you know, there were some times in there was a lot of compression. So what we're asking for, it's not gonna fix it overnight. What we're asking for is the 0.5% per year of service. It's a longevity pay, to kind of spread that out a little bit. So,
In your current grade, so if a sergeant, been a sergeant for 3 years, that'd be a 1.5% increase to that person.
Brett, do you have a copy of what I sent you?
Minus those who have just been promoted, correct?
Minus what?
Those who have just been promoted.
Well, there is language in here that if you're promoted during the contract, then your grade will be assessed at your previous grade. Because if you don't do that, you're just recreating a compression issue in another area.
And this is a one-time in the first year payment, one-time first year.
Right. Because we understand that you can't fix what's happened in the past, so it's too much money. But what you can do is you can take an incremental step in trying to address those situations to where you know, because then it puts a, you know, you keep raising the starting pay because the starting pay is where all the competitive, or all the competition is through all these jobs. So in order to be competitive, you keep raising the starting pay. Well, what about all the guys that have been here for a long time? They always seem to, you know they're not going anywhere. They got 15 years and 5 years left. So it's one of those things to where it kind of rewards the loyalty of the officer.
sergeant 3 years, 0.5%, they get an extra 1.5 on top of, then B is the $1.53. Again, those people, 1.5, 2, 2.5, whatever. Any cap, you don't have a cap. I mean, somebody been a police officer 20 years.
Like a 10%?
Yeah, 10% or two.
I don't think was anybody near the cap?
No.
I don't think there's
There was
anybody.
nobody just near the top out pay, if that's what you're referring to, the cap. or the
Well, I'm
top
thinking of
out.
just the cap on this adjustment, though. If you had 20
No,
years.
there's no, if you've been an officer for 19 years, then you're getting 0.5% per year at 19 years.
I said, we just want to understand it.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood you guys saying. But if you've been a sergeant for 15 years, it's the same thing. You know, you get your,
Right.
Sorry, Chief,
I
they
said
wouldn't
I
have
don't
put something in
know.
there for you.
He's in a different union. I don't know how you guys run and how you do your homework, but do you have the cost of this, if we implemented this as you've said it, if you run the numbers?
No, we don't have.
We
the-
will do it.
Right,
obviously, but,
so if you guys could give us, I mean, you guys have the calculations and the formulas for, I mean, I understand that this 3% is not just a 3% on the wage, it's a 3% on pension contribution, you know, so I don't know how you calculate it, so we didn't calculate it.
For costing, for our purposes, we will just use wages.
Okay, so just.
You know, we like when you do your own costing, because it's important for you all to understand what you're working with. We will do them as well. We're happy to share what we have with you, but it does help if you also do it, just so you know, when you're preparing the numbers, what you're asking for.
All right, it's easy to say, oh, give us 0.5%, but I'm not saying it costs $1 million, but I mean, you know, do you realize what it costs to do that? Well, to do our due diligence, we'll have to figure that out too, because we couldn't agree to something we didn't understand.
And then if we both do it also, we'll catch mistakes, because a lot of times when you're working with spreadsheets, there are going to be mistakes, and we want those to be caught here, not after we,
Okay.
close the contract, so the more you can flesh it out, the better. We'll do the same, and we'll share that with you. We can do that back and forth.
And I think the rest we understand, $1.53, then years 2 and 3, 3%. And then what's E? Can you clarify E there? For courses, should employee be promoted before the ratification of the contract? That's what you were talking about before.
Yes,
What's
yeah,
that
if you're
example?
promoted during the negotiation process, your grade for the purposes of the 0.5% will be assessed at your previous grade. So for instance, if you were a corporal promoted to sergeant during this time frame, your grade will be assessed at how many years of service you added in corporal.
So starting
Yeah, not
when?
as sergeant.
Like starting October 1 through ratification, or what's that period?
Yes.
October 1 to whenever the contract's ratified?
Right.
Is that what
Yes.
you're thinking?
And you got some promotions coming up, so, it's kind of, do I take the promotion and miss out on this percentage? Do I not? I mean, so that's where that's
I gotcha.
at.
Okay.
All right, like I said, we're not gonna have an answer for you on that, but so we can start our homework and due diligence and calculate, we need to understand what you're asking for. And then pension, let's see.
Let me ask you one more question. Okay, let's say you were promoted, so we're gonna go back, use the pre-promotion pay grade rank and the years associated with that rank and the pay associated with that rank. So are you asking us kind of to reverse the calculation out? So we do your time and grade before your promotion and apply your time and grade increase and then do your promotional increase after that?
Right,
Is that
I'll
what
give you
you're
for
saying?
instance, I just got promoted, right, so I was a corporal for 1.5 years. So it would be, I would only get like not even 3/4
Right.
of 1%.
Okay.
That's what I would like to put.
So
some people would-
instead, what would you would go back to?
I would get half, I would, if I were to get promoted now, I mean, for me, it makes minimal difference, because if I got it for my promotion, it would be 0.5%. So it's just really 1/4% is what we're talking about in my instance. But in his instance, he just got promoted, and the corporal, and you have how many years? 14. He's got 14 years.
Yeah.
So he just got promoted now, he would get 0.5% as opposed to 14 years.
Right, no, I get that. What I'm trying to see is the sequence of calculations. So do you want to undo the promotion, go back to your previous rank?
Yes.
Do your time and grade calculation, and then apply your promotional percentage increase?
Yes, correct.
Yes,
Not,
correct. Not as your current rank, right.
So you
so you're
get
gonna
the 7%.
undo your promotion, do your time and grade, and then put your promotion back on top of it?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
But you wouldn't get, when you're promoted, you get 7.5%.
Right.
Let's say you had that, so this gentleman would get 14 years, 7.5%. You wouldn't put 7.5 on top of 7.5. 7.5 sort of stands alone.
No, so they're saying you would get
7%.
your 7% on your time and grade, but at your pay rate as your previous rank.
As an officer.
Yes.
Right.
Then we would calculate all that, then we would say, we'll give you your promotion back, which is 7%, was it 7%?
7.5.
7.5. So then on top of that, you get 7.5 with your,
Correct.
That's, okay, so you asked them to clarify after we're saying something. That then wouldn't be a one-time thing for this year. But we'll figure that out.
right, yeah, I just want to know what your,
Yeah, and that's just,
It's a one-time thing.
Yeah.
that's to avoid shifting that compression to just kind of moving it around instead of solving it across the board. So,
right.
Basically, it's just to not repeat what happened in Boardmere kind of deal. That's what it's really for. Learn from our previous mistakes and we'll be fine.
And then, you ready?
Yes.
And pension, 3 tiers from 20 and out for all tiers. And all that is now, as I understand it, and the multiplier stays as it is for the tiers. Then cost of living for all 3 plans, 2% a year.
So, let me explain that, and then I have a couple questions as far as the pension that I think we're not understanding. So, with that, you have 3 different tiers of pension. So some people have the 3.3%, then 2 point. The multiplier reduces each step. We understand, with the hit that happened in 2010, that the pensions really got hit with the property value or property devaluations, but we've come a long way since then. So what we're asking for is to do an incremental step, because we can't just keep saying, oh, future contract. Well, you got all these young kids that you're trying to recruit. They don't want to do 25 and out. You've got a lot of young guys that are contemplating on either staying or leaving based on a 20 and out pension. And what we're asking for is an incremental increase to get everybody to the top tier of the pension. So our goal is to get everybody on the top tier, the best pension, the number 1. What we're asking for in this is that the 20 and out pension be across all 3 tiers, where their multipliers, their yearly multipliers, do not change. These guys, the younger guys, have an opportunity over time, as the pension contributions from the city decrease, to be able to bargain for that in the future. The goal is to start moving everybody towards the original pension. But, again, we understand you can't just do it overnight, but we'd like to see some steps in that.
So the 20 now, no change to the multiplier, and then adding the COLA?
Yes.
That's the
Extra 1%.
Oh, you have 1%, so you're adding,
You're adding the
One.
other percent.
just adding 1 more.
Yeah, and again, like somebody in the background said, with no age requirement. So, right, you want a truly 20 and out pension. So if you do 20 years and you start at, I don't know, how young can you be a cop? I think 19?
19.
So if you start at 19, you're 39, you should be able to draw and not have to wait till 55. Otherwise, it's not a 20 and out pension.
I got you, I know what the out means.
I was talking to Mark, I know you do.
You can get out, as long as you're a certain age.
And again, I don't know how, we would, that was the other thing we were gonna, I know that's gonna have to get cost out as well. So what we did in Port Orange is the union and the city split the cost to have the actuarial study done to determine how much money that's gonna cost. So, I think that's fair. Both sides benefit from that, instead of putting the burden on one.
Well, the one interesting thing I will just say is I think, at least our current commission has not been favorable towards making pension changes. We did not make pension changes for others, although they requested it. The one good thing is we're gonna have a new commission.
Well, I'm not done, so you're packing away yet. I'm not done with the pension
That's all
stuff.
those are.
Oh, okay. So I know where you're going with this, so.
I'll just finish that thought. We got a new commission. We don't know what direction we're gonna get, so we will.
We don't know who they are yet.
Yeah,
so-
we don't even know who they are yet until after
We're gonna
today,
keep
I
our
guess.
fingers crossed.
So,
It's about 8
I'm
o'clock
just saying
tonight.
that I can assure you and everybody that, from our side, we're very cautious and diligent in getting direction and guidance from our commission. We let them know very carefully what you all want and why you want it. We don't want an impasse. If we ever got to an impasse, we don't want them to claim surprise, oh my God, the city manager didn't tell us something. So we're very transparent with our commission when we do meet with them in shade meetings. And, I just want you to know that we work hard to be sure they know both sides of the issue, they know what your arguments are, and we give them our arguments, and then they give us guidance. And so, we're here to, this isn't contrary to property belief, this is not what Mark Levin wants or anything else, it's what the guidance we get from the city council, the city commission is. So, if they want to give you a 100% wage increase, I'm not a taxpayer, it's not my money, it's fine with me. So I'm just reassuring you that what you tell us about your positions and why you want them, we are very transparent with our commission. And we've got a new commission that we're going to have to educate on the whole process because some new people won't even know this process. So we're committed to doing that. We want to do what the city commission directs us to do. So I wasn't packing up to go home. I was just.
Oh, I didn't know. I was like, I got all this stuff together. I feel like I want to be on stage.
No, please take your time.
Okay, so I printed out the ordinance, number 2017-11, the pension ordinance. And this was signed, it looks like, in 2017. So I just had a question. Section 16-99.1, it basically says, there is hereby established an additional plan component to provide special benefits in the form of supplemental retirement, termination, death and disability benefits to be in addition to the benefits provided for the previous sections of this plan. Such benefits to be funded solely and entirely by Florida statute, chapter 185 premium tax monies for each plan year, which are allocated to this supplemental component as provided in Florida statute 185.35. Amounts allocated to this supplement component share plan shall be further allocated to the members and drop participants in the manner to be agreed upon.
You lost me at good morning, but go ahead.
So my understanding with the 185 monies is that there is it says in the manners agreed upon by the participants. So I'm assuming is that the contract? Is that what this was talking about? Is there something else that's signed that?
No.
So it's a contract?
Yeah, I believe it's in there, right?
Right.
Is that not included in the pension?
I printed this right off, I just printed the ordinance.
Right.
She's talking about 34.8.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
So yeah, it is mentioned in
Yeah.
34.8.
Where it says it splits it.
Yeah.
That's Article 34.8.
The 34.
30/40.
Okay. So I'm going to let Brian take over on this.
And I will, before you start too much, let's kind of start the discussion, but if we want to talk in depth about the share plan, we'll need to have Kelly, our finance director, come in and speak with you, but why don't you give us the overview and then we'll
Regarding
see.
the share plan, you had spoken with him about it, right?
Well, so Rhett did. I think I contacted you because I wanted to make sure before we started, I wanted to make sure that we were seeing the whole picture when we start talking about 185 monies. What is the 185 monies? What are they funding? And we were referred to, what was her name?
Kelly McGuire.
Kelly McGuire.
Yeah.
So Kelly McGuire said there is no share plan because all the money is going to the unfunded liability. So we, in 34.8 of the pension article, and, we're coming in, as the new union. So I'm seeking some clarification on this.
question is there a share plan?
But there's not, well, there isn't one, we asked, there isn't one. But the question, I think it is 34.8 is, our interpretation of it, is the excess state monies, which is the 185 monies, will be distributed as it comes available in the following manner. Half of that money will be used to fund the unfunded liability. Half will go into a share account for the members of the pension. I think I'm missing something, I'm misunderstanding. Based on the language of the contract, the 50% should be going to the officers.
All right, yeah, let's talk about that during our caucus, just because we all
Okay.
have different pieces of information on that.
Okay, so, yeah, but it literally is, it's a question because
I
reading the
understand.
contract, we don't have a share plan, so, you know, I
What's
have,
going on with the money? is what-
what's going on with the money?
Just, is there money and where's it going?
Correct.
Right, and
And if-
under what
Correct.
document is it being distributed?
Correct.
Well, there is money.
There is money,
Okay.
it's just not being, it's just not being
yeah.
divided in half.
So we'll get that information.
Right.
So, I mean, I have this, I can give this to you. We pulled this up off the premium tax distribution calculations off the state of Florida website. 2019, Ormond Beach's share of that 185 money for the police pension was $411,220.29. The 2021 premium, or the 2020 premium tax benefit for the pension from the 185 monies was $415, 190.13. And then the 2021 was $440,126.81. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and this is off the state website, and I'll give it to you, is I pulled your actuary report for 2021 off of your city website. And so when we're talking to, you know, you were having these shade meetings talking about unfunded liability, I also pulled up the firefighters. The firefighters' pension unfunded, or they're funded at 70% based on the 2021 actuarial study I pulled up off the internet. The police officers are 83.7%, and this is your guys' actuarial study. As a matter of fact, during the recession, they dropped, this is the graph off of, I think it's page 19 of the actuary. We have used, it went from 60.5%, and you can see every year from 2011, it has gone up, well, except for 2016, it has gone up, and now they're 83.7% funded. So we're 83.7% funded, and we understand what happened with the recession. But there's no additional benefits being gained from this pension. The unfunded liability's gone down, which, according to the actuarial study, the portion of the budget is 30-something% off, 30.7% of the budget for these guys. That's not a lot of money. I mean, they're moving in the right direction. Their pension is funded, is sufficiently funded, continues to be sufficiently funded, and that's where these 185 monies come in. So I can give you this, you can pull it off, it's the actuarial study. Here's the monies that were received. And again, back to the 185 monies and 34.8, during this contract within these years, you know, if we're splitting this 50-50, we're looking, you know, around 600,000. You know, we're just we just want to know where it's going. So I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just asking questions. So
We will piece that together.
okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, probably a good time to break, I think.
Yeah, let's take a break, and then we'll see.
We need to locate here, Claire needs to be part of that meeting, et cetera. So it makes sense, take break to 3 and then tell you we're done, so we start that. In the meantime, we did call Kelly in to explain a little bit to us, and in the 15 minutes we have, we thought we'd at least try to address that. And then the plan would be from there, whether we reset a meeting today or via email, get another meeting, and we'll be prepared to come back to you with our responses for the PTA if we have any changes and things like that. So
Okay.
we'll keep it moving as best we can for you. So the question of the hour is, where's the beef? As the old commercial said, where's the money on the share plan? apparently Kelly has talked to this gentleman a little bit, tried to explain some things, but she's going to try to lay it out for everybody, so the floor is yours.
All right, fabulous. So the cost of the benefit enhancements that were previously provided with the state funding is $540,000. So that's our frozen amount. The shared plan doesn't kick in until we receive more than that amount. So this past fiscal year, we got roughly $440,000. So I don't know when there'll be a share plan, really. But I sent you a list of the previously approved benefit enhancements, right? Those were committed to be paid for, at least in part, with that state money,
Okay,
right?
So
So the
money
cost
goes
of all
to-
those benefit enhancements that have previously been approved with that state money is $540,000 a year.
okay.
Well, we haven't gotten $540,000 in, I don't know how many years, right? So when we get less than that, the city just covers the difference, that's the agreement. When we receive more than that, if we ever receive more than that, the agreement that's in place right now is that a share plan would kick in.
Okay,
So let's just say hypothetically, next year, we get $550,000. $540,000 would go towards the benefits that have already been approved. $10,000 would be available for the provision that's in the contract right now, which is half would go right back into the pension plan to pay down the liabilities, half would go into a share plan. And then, obviously, the union would have to determine how that money is shared amongst the members.
okay. So I think I missed this, what you said. So there's a contract that specifies that this, the additional benefits that this is supposedly funding, correct?
It's not a contract. These have been brought to us over the course of the last 20-plus years. So they're just ordinances, right? They're individual ordinances for each of those changes. For example, when the police went from a 2.7 multiplier to a 3%.
Right.
There was a cost associated with that. It was agreed that the state money would be used to fund that. Sometime later, there was a 1% COLA added, right? Again, that's a separate ordinance. So what I said, Rhett, was the list of all the ordinances that I had. I mean, it could be more,
Oh, no,
but they
no.
go back to 1991. Every ordinance change that was made and how it was funded.
This one?
So who is the agreement with?
There's not an agreement. The agreements were
It's an
made with the
ordinance.
unions at the time, yeah. At the time that those changes were made,
That's where I want to see the statute.
right?
So I got you, and so I understand what you're saying. But you're talking $540,000 a year, but every year the unfunded liability, the city's portion of that, has dropped significantly.
Right, that's,
So I think we're gonna get into, this was a $540,000 per year thing, and the city's already dropped below with their, because every year, we're at 83.7% funded.
but you're talking about an apple and an orange. So the $540,000 is the normal cost to provide that benefit,
Right,
right?
Mhm.
For every year, right? It's $540,000 that has to be contributed to provide that benefit and continue to provide that benefit
for every person. in
for
the
every
bargaining.
person, right?
So every person in the bargaining unit gets,
Right, that,
Whatever it applies to,
right.
whatever the
it
ordinance
is,
says it
right.
applies to.
So the 1% COLA applies to everyone, right? It
Okay.
doesn't matter when you were hired, that's gonna apply to everyone.
okay,
Right?
Mhm.
Now, there have been subsequent changes to that, as you know. Now we have like a two-tiered system, right? So there have been subsequent changes to that.
okay. But the contract that they signed, that the city signed with the union, we read the article, that's where I understand what you're saying, you're fine, you're taking us and doing what the ordinance says. The ordinance refers to the contract says something that we interpret totally different than what's going on.
Okay, I'm not sure what the understanding of the interpretation is.
Okay. I
What your
guess
interpretation is, right?
Well,
It says the excess funds.
Well, is the?
It says the
So
excess
they're not
funds,
excess, it's
right?
costs.
But there's no excess yet,
Funds-
that's the
funds
issue.
are paying off.
But isn't the,
But the funds go to pay any new benefits, so over the years, they've wanted, the union and the individuals have asked for new benefits. The pension and the city commission agreed to fund them and set a cost for that. So they're no longer, it's not an excess fund, it's funds committed for certain benefits, so therefore there's not an excess. You're right. Contract says any excess money is shared through a share plan, but it's not excess, as Kelly said, until it's over the 540.
Yeah,
Whatever the frozen amount is.
okay. We'll have to, we're gonna look at, I disagree, I think we'll have to talk about it, but, the unfunded liability keeps going down too,
Because we're funding it on top of that. We're paying lots of money into it.
The unfunded liability has multiple factors. One of
Oh, I
which
do.
is the interest, right?
right,
When we earn interest, more interest than the board has set the benchmark for, the unfunded liability drops. When we don't,
right, I think.
let's look at the report on September 30th of 2022 when we get it.
Okay.
I bet that unfunded liability has gone up.
Okay.
Right, because we've lost.
Right, yeah,
whatever
yeah,
percentage.
and then when is that gonna be available, is that, you know, when that's gonna be available?
It'll be available at the December 9th meeting of the
Okay.
pension board.
Okay, because I was just going off of 2021,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's
I
last
got
one,
you.
yeah.
What you estimated 4.5, you got 6.5, I think that's, so we're probably gonna go down to 4.5. Okay. We'll take a look at
All
that,
right, so,
but,
yeah, so that's our explanation. I mean, you guys are free to
Right, well-
consider it, disagree with it, challenge it.
well, yeah, well, there's some,
Hopefully agree with it.
yeah, I got you.
All right, so,
I-
yeah, do you want to schedule, do you want to look at another meeting over here? Or everybody-
Do you wanna wait till after the storm, before we?
We can schedule something now.
Okay.
Couple weeks out,
We're gonna need
after
time too,
Thanksgiving,
so you
maybe
get-
after the holiday,
For sure.
yeah.
So we're gonna need time, you need to get through storm, whatever the aftermath is. You gotta have time for us to meet and get through all this stuff.
Yeah, if we could get one after Thanksgiving, before Christmas.
Brian, Mike, it's up to you guys.
We get December 5th.
You said after,
Oh, that's-
Yeah, maybe, the week of December 5th, the end of the week, 7th, 8th, 9th.
I'm good that whole time, December 5th through the 9th, guys. You good, 5th through the 9th? Okay, yeah, I prefer the, a Tuesday.
That is the only day we can pretty much have
Okay.
Sorry. The end of the week works best, third Thursday or Friday.
So let's make it Monday, the 5th, December 5th.
Not,
For us to-
yeah, it's kind of tight. Do you have anything later in that week, or are you towards the end of the week? I want to make sure we have articles ready for you.
Okay. Well, 9th, fine, we do Fridays, 8th,
All right.
whichever.
Thursday, Friday? Friday? I don't know.
Friday. yeah.
Friday?
Friday morning.
You do Friday? Friday?
Okay.
Okay.
Late, can we do like?
Afternoon?
No, mid-morning, like 10, 9:30, 10, is
Yeah,
that fine?
10?
10.
All right, we will, some of these that you propose that we don't have additional changes on, we'll try and just TA those and send them over to you so we can get them off.
And I'm positive I missed an FOP, and I mean,
Oh, you know. we'll
Mark's
just-
already left it out, so.
It's okay, we're gonna search the whole document,
Okay.
so.
Then what time, you say 10?
10 a.m.
That's fine.
on the ninth.
And we're gonna go 10 to,
I don't want anyone getting hangry. But I also want a chunk of time.
One or two.
1 or 2, yeah. We'll bring some snacks in.
okay,
It'll just be here.
okay, that'll work.
So let's do 2.
Sam will bring
Yeah.
it.
10 to
What
2.
would we do, we changed it, what?
Just 10 to 2. I don't.
What's next? Everybody's
Does it
gonna,
influence whether you show up?
Correct.
Yeah.
Did have one union, it was like a college teachers union. They always brought in food. They used to bring in, one time they brought in like a griddle and they were and eggs and omelets. We're not gonna do that. Maybe donuts.
It's too late.
What's that, the only?
10 to 2, it's too late for donuts.
No,
No,
Especially on a Friday, like. Did you go to Friday?
No.
Are we done?
Oh, this is something.
I know.